May I have your leftovers, sir? She whispered. I'm not asking for money, she said softly. Just the food. For him. The billionaire looked up and saw a baby in her arms, and in that moment his whole world changed. The restaurant was quiet, like it always was on Wednesday nights. Soft music drifted from a live piano in the corner, wrapping around the clink of silverware and low whispers from polished tables. Golden chandeliers hung like frozen stars from the ceiling, casting a warm light that made everything look perfect. But Daniel Thompson didn't feel perfect. He sat at his usual table, the one near the window, tucked behind a tall vase of fresh lilies. Across from him was the chair that had once belonged to his wife, empty, just like it had been for the last 4 years. He stared at the untouched plate in front of him. Filet steak, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables. The smell should have made him hungry, but all it did was remind him of how hollow everything felt now. He lifted his wineglass, swirling the dark red liquid slowly. It caught the light, danced a little, but it didn't matter. Nothing really mattered these days. Daniel Thompson was the kind of man people read about. Billionaire tech genius, featured in magazines, guest speaker at conferences. But tonight, alone at that table, none of that power could fill the quiet that lived inside him. His wife, Sarah, and their daughter, Hannah, had been gone for 4 years, lost to a car accident on a rainy highway he still couldn't forget. His friends told him to move on. His assistants kept him busy. But Daniel didn't want to move on. He wanted to remember. That's why he kept coming back here. Same table, same meal, same silence. Then, just as he brought the glass to his lips, a soft voice broke the air beside him. Barely above a whisper, but clear. May I have your leftovers, sir? Daniel froze. He turned his head slowly and saw her. A young woman standing quietly by his table. She looked about 19, maybe 20. Her coat was thin and worn, her shoes soaked from the rain outside. And in her arms, bundled in a threadbare blanket, was a baby. The restaurant seemed to stop breathing. Forks paused. Eyes turned. A waiter started to step forward, but Daniel raised his hand. He didn't know why, but he needed to hear her again. Please, she added, just for the baby. Daniel stared at her. He didn't speak. He couldn't. It was the way she looked at him, like someone who had been through fire and refused to break. There was no fear in her face, just quiet strength. And something inside him, something long buried, stirred. He looked down at his untouched food, then back at her, and in that moment everything began to change. You could have heard a pin drop. The hum of soft conversation, the light laughter, even the piano. All of it faded the second the young woman spoke. Her voice hadn't been loud. In fact, it was barely more than a whisper. But somehow, it reached every ear in the room. Daniel sat frozen, his fingers still gently wrapped around the stem of his wineglass. The girl, young, soaked, tired, stood with a baby pressed tightly to her chest, his small face barely visible beneath the folds of a faded pink blanket. Another waiter appeared at Daniel's side almost immediately. Sir, should I? Daniel didn't look at him. He simply raised one hand, a simple, quiet signal. Don't. The girl didn't flinch at the attention. She didn't shift or back away. Her arms held the baby like a shield and a promise all at once. Her face was pale, her hair wet from the drizzle outside, strands clinging to her forehead. But her eyes, those dark, steady eyes, were locked onto Daniel's. I'm not asking for money, she added softly. Just the food. For him. The baby stirred and let out a tiny, unhappy sound, like he was tired of waiting. Daniel blinked, as though waking from a heavy dream. All around them, people whispered. A couple across the room shook their heads. Someone scoffed. A man near the entrance pulled out his phone to record. But Daniel didn't care. Not tonight. He looked down at his plate. He hadn't even touched it. He looked back up at her. What's his name? Daniel asked, surprising even himself. Junior, she said. He's 8 months. Daniel nodded slowly. Something in his chest shifted. Something he hadn't felt in years. He couldn't quite name it. Maybe it was the way she stood, firm and steady. Maybe it was the way she spoke. Not with desperation, but with calm dignity. Or maybe it was the way the baby, little Junior, looked at the plate like he knew it could mean relief. Daniel pushed the plate gently toward her. "Take it," he said. The girl didn't rush. She didn't snatch it or cry. Instead, she took a deep breath, reached into the bag slung over her shoulder, and pulled out a small cloth napkin, clean but fraying at the corners. With careful hands, she wrapped the food inside, folding it like something valuable, not scraps. Then she pulled a plastic spoon from her coat pocket and knelt down right there on the restaurant floor. Junior's eyes lit up. Daniel watched unmoving as the young woman scooped a spoonful of mashed potatoes, blew gently on it, and fed it to her son. The baby took it with a soft coo, his tiny lips parting like he'd just tasted the world. His little fingers curled, patting her chest, and then he smiled, a wide, warm, gummy smile that made Daniel's throat tighten. It wasn't pity he felt. It was awe. She wasn't begging. She was feeding her child, and she was doing it with more grace than most people in that room had ever shown. As the whispers swirled around him and judgment filled the air, Daniel felt something else rise in his chest. Respect. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off her. The girl didn't speak again. She didn't ask for more. She didn't explain. She just focused on feeding the baby in her arms with quiet, patient care. Junior cooed softly between spoonfuls, his tiny feet kicking under the blanket. The mashed potatoes were warm, and each bite brought a little more peace to the child's face. His mother, this young woman who had interrupted the most exclusive restaurant in the city, never once looked around. She didn't check who was watching or how they might be judging her. Her eyes were only on her baby, and Daniel realized something else. She wasn't ashamed. Her coat was soaked at the shoulders, its seams stretched and unraveling. Her shoes, white canvas sneakers that had turned a muddy gray, were coming apart at the edges. Her fingers were red from the cold, but her back remained straight, her head held steady. There was a kind of strength in her that couldn't be dressed up or bought. Not one of the rich patrons in that room, not one of the men in suits or women in diamonds, carried themselves with half the dignity she did in that moment. When Junior seemed satisfied, she stopped. She didn't keep the food for herself. Instead, she folded the cloth bundle neatly and placed it back into her bag. Her hands were careful, almost ceremonial. Daniel noticed how she pulled the baby's blanket tighter, brushing his tiny forehead gently with her thumb. She whispered something into his ear, words no one else could hear. Then she stood. She looked at Daniel. For the first time, their eyes truly met. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the quiet hum of the restaurant. "Thank you," she said. Not out of politeness, but from somewhere deep and unshaken. A thank you that held weight. A thank you that acknowledged more than the meal. She didn't linger. She didn't lower her gaze. Instead, she turned. She walked slowly toward the door, head high, baby cradled tight against her chest. No rush, no shame. Just the firm steps of someone who knew the world hadn't been kind, but refused to let it break her. No one stopped her. No one dared. Daniel watched until the glass doors closed behind her. For a long moment, he didn't move. The candle on his table flickered. The wine glass remained untouched, and in the seat across from him, the ghost of his past felt a little less heavy. The waiter stepped closer again. "Sir, shall I bring another plate?" Daniel shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "She needed that one more than I ever did." And for the first time in years, he meant it. Outside, the air was sharp and damp. Rain misted under the streetlights, turning the pavement silver. Daniel sat in his car, engine running, parked just across from the restaurant. He didn't remember walking out. His body had moved before his mind caught up. He wasn't sure why he stayed parked there. Maybe curiosity. Maybe guilt. Maybe something else he hadn't felt in years. Something unfamiliar and unsettling. Then he saw her again. The girl, the baby. She didn't head for a bus stop or flag a taxi. Instead, she turned down a side street, moving quickly through the drizzle. Daniel waited a few seconds, then pulled out slowly. Headlights dimmed, following at a cautious distance. She walked 2 blocks, then slipped through the gate of an old lot. It looked abandoned, cracked concrete, weeds growing through it, a few rusted vehicles sitting like ghosts in the dark. She weaved between them until she reached a navy blue sedan tucked into the far corner. It took Daniel a moment to realize what he was looking at. Home. The car was old and dented, its rear window covered with a towel pinned at the edges. She opened the back door and ducked inside, cradling the baby close as she did. A small solar lantern flickered to life, dim but warm. Daniel stayed parked across the street, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel. He could see them through the fogged glass. She sat upright, resting her back against a folded coat. Junior was curled in her lap, blanket wrapped around him like a cocoon. Then she began to sing. It wasn't loud. The sound barely reached him, even through the night stillness. But he recognized the tune. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. The baby stirred and let out a sound, a soft gurgle. Then, that smile again. That same wide, gummy, pure smile he'd seen in the restaurant. The mashed potatoes smile. Daniel's heart clenched. Not out of pity. This wasn't a woman begging for handouts. This was a mother trying to survive, one spoonful at a time. She wasn't asking for the world. She was asking for a moment, just one moment where her baby could be warm, full, and safe. He watched as she laid Junior down gently on a thin cushion, covering him with the blanket. She sat beside him, hand on his chest, humming until the child's eyes drifted shut. Daniel leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. That smile, so simple, so small, had torn something wide open inside him. He had walked away from love a long time ago, buried it. But tonight, under a gray sky and a flickering streetlight, a baby's mashed potato smile had cracked open the vault of his heart. And nothing would ever be the same. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay awake in his penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city skyline, sheets that probably cost more than the car she lived in, and felt restless for the first time in years. Images ran on repeat in his mind. The baby's small smile, the way she wrapped that food like it was gold, her voice as she hummed a lullaby in the dark. And that car, that old Navy sedan. He got up sometime around 3 a.m., barefoot on the marble floors, and stood by the window with a glass of water in his hand. But the city lights offered no peace, just more noise, more empty beauty. He had spent years convincing himself he was fine. He had everything. He had more than enough. But that night, he realized how little that meant if you had no one to share it with. The next morning, Daniel drove back to the lot. He parked a street away, watching through his windshield. The sedan was still there. No movement yet. It was cold. He could see the breath of passers-by fogging the air as they hurried by. Then, just after 7 a.m., the back door of the car creaked open. She stepped out slowly, holding Junior against her chest, wrapped tightly in the same blanket. She stretched, rubbed her neck, then crouched down to change the baby's diaper on the car seat with practiced speed. Her face looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but from life itself. Still, she whispered to the baby, smiled at him, brushed a kiss on his cheek, before tucking him into a carrier strapped to her front. Then she reached into the front seat, pulled out a small plastic tub, filled with what looked like cleaning supplies and rags, and started walking. Daniel followed, at a distance again. She stopped at a small cafe a few blocks away, where she began scrubbing the windows outside. A man in an apron opened the door and handed her a muffin and a few coins. She thanked him with a nod, took a seat on the curb, and split the muffin in half. One piece for her. One piece for Junior, mashed gently with her fingers. Daniel sat in his car, heart heavy. This was where she slept. This was how she lived. One favor at a time. One crumb. One kind stranger. One lucky break. And yet, she didn't complain. She didn't look defeated. She looked like someone who had decided that, as long as her baby had food, warmth, and a lullaby, she could keep going. Daniel had seen entrepreneurs pitch billion-dollar ideas with less determination. He leaned back in his seat and made a decision. If she wasn't going to ask for help, he'd give it anyway. But he'd do it her way. Quiet, respectful, and always for the baby first. Daniel waited until the end of the day. She came back to the lot around sunset, carrying the same plastic tub, her coat now damp from mist, and her shoulders visibly heavier than in the morning. Junior was asleep against her chest, his tiny hand gripping a loose thread of her scarf. Daniel parked 2 cars away and stepped out slowly. He didn't want to scare her. As she opened the car door, she paused. She sensed him before she saw him. Her back stiffened slightly. Her grip on the baby tightened. "I'm not here to bother you," Daniel said gently, "or take anything." She turned, eyes guarded but calm. "I just wanted to talk," he added. For a few seconds, the air between them was still, silent, cold. Then she gave a tiny nod and leaned against the edge of the car door, shifting the baby's weight in her arms. "You followed me last night." He didn't deny it. "Yes." "Why?" Daniel took a breath. "Because I couldn't forget the way your baby smiled after eating mashed potatoes." That made her blink. She wasn't expecting that answer. "What's his name?" he asked again, softer this time. She looked down at the child sleeping on her chest, then back up. "Junior." Daniel smiled a little. "Strong name." She looked him over. Still in his tailored coat, his shoes spotless against the gravel. "You're not like us," she said. Not bitter, just honest. "I know," he replied. "But I also know what it's like to lose someone, to sit alone with food you don't want, to feel like the world just kept going without you." Her eyes shifted. He wasn't lying. "I'm Daniel," he said. "Ada." Daniel nodded. "You used to be in school, didn't you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Computer science. Before everything. Before Junior?" He watched her carefully, then asked, "Where's his father?" She looked down, then quietly replied, "I met him in school. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready to be a father. Told me to get an abortion." She paused. "But I couldn't do that. I decided to keep the pregnancy." Her voice grew steady, almost matter-of-fact. "When my parents found out, they cut me off completely. So I've been raising Junior on my own. Just me and him." Daniel felt a quiet anger rise in him. Not at her, but at the weight she had to carry. Alone. "How long have you lived in the car?" he asked. "Almost 2 months." He looked at the peeling paint, the taped windows, the sagging seats. "That's not safe." "I know," she said. "But it's warm, and it's all I've got." Daniel nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I'm not offering money," he said quickly. "Just this." She took it warily, unfolding it. It was a prepaid room reservation. A modest motel. Clean. Safe. Paid for 2 weeks. No strings. "I don't want anything from you," Daniel said. "I just want Junior to have a bed, and you to have a break." Ada looked at the paper, then at him, then at Junior, and for the first time she looked tired enough to say yes. She didn't thank him. She just nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Okay." The motel wasn't fancy. Just a small 2-story building tucked behind a row of shops, with a faded red sign and a front desk manned by someone who barely looked up from his newspaper. But to Ada, it felt like a castle. She unlocked the door and stepped into the room. It smelled faintly of disinfectant and old curtains, but the sheets were clean, and the heater worked. Junior let out a tired whimper as she laid him on the bed. She ran her hand gently over his forehead and whispered, "It's okay, baby. We're safe." That night, for the first time in weeks, Ada slept lying down. Not curled in the back seat of a car. Not clutching her baby with one eye open. But on an actual bed, with warmth and a roof. And Daniel? He didn't sleep either. Again. Instead, he made a plan. The next morning, before the sun was up, he placed a sealed bag at the motel door. Baby formula, diapers, a thermos of hot tea, and a small note that simply said, "For Junior." No signature, no expectations. He left quietly, long before she woke, and he kept doing it. Each day brought something new. Clean onesies, a bottle of baby lotion, soft blankets, gentle shampoo. All brand new, all delivered before sunrise, always without a name. Ada didn't need to ask who it was. At first, she didn't want to accept it. She was used to being let down, used to surviving with nothing. But the help came with no pressure, no questions, no judgment, just silent kindness. And slowly, she began to believe that maybe not everything in the world was out to break her. Daniel never knocked. He didn't call. He never asked to see her. He simply showed up through small actions, consistent, quiet, intentional. He had built billion-dollar companies by paying attention to details. Now he was using that same focus to care for two strangers, one bottle, one spoon, one warm blanket at a time. He told no one, not his assistant, not his board, not his friends. This wasn't about him. It was about the baby, about that moment in the restaurant that cracked his heart open, about a young woman with tired eyes and unshakable pride who had asked for nothing but a chance to feed her child. And the truth? It gave him peace. More peace than any deal, headline, or award ever had. The day had started like any other. Ada woke early, bathed Junior with warm water from the motel tap, fed him formula from the bag that had appeared again outside the door, and kissed his cheek. The sun filtered through the cheap blinds, casting stripes of gold across the bed. Junior was a little fussy that morning, but Ada didn't think much of it. Babies have off days, she told herself. She bundled him up and went to the laundry shop where she'd been picking up shifts. Cleaning, folding, anything that paid. By late afternoon, Junior had stopped smiling. He didn't eat the mashed carrots she warmed in the motel microwave. He whimpered when she tried to hold him upright, and his forehead felt hot. Too hot. Ada checked again. Still burning. Panic crept in. She soaked a towel in cool water and laid it across his head, singing quietly, trying to stay calm. She rocked him, whispered to him, held him close. But by 9 p.m., he was burning up, eyes glassy, breathing fast. Ada's hands shook as she wrapped him tighter and rushed out of the motel, grabbing only her phone, a bottle, and a thin jacket. The nearest hospital was 10 minutes away on foot. Each minute felt like an hour. When she got there, the emergency room was full. The receptionist barely glanced up. "He's burning up," Ada said quickly. "Please, he's only 8 months. He's not responding properly." The woman sighed, pulled out a form. "Do you have insurance?" Ada hesitated. "No." The woman's expression flattened. "Then you'll have to wait, or go to county." "Please," Ada begged. He's burning up. Just look at him." "We're full," the receptionist said, with the cold finality of someone who'd said it too many times that night. "I'm sorry." Tears stung Ada's eyes. She clutched Junior closer. He was limp now. Too quiet. She stepped outside. Cold air slapped her face. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone, unlocked it, opened the last message thread she hadn't used in days. 2 words. "Help us." She hit send. She didn't know if he'd answer. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe he'd regret getting involved at all. But 6 minutes later, a black SUV tore into the hospital driveway like a storm. The door flew open. Daniel jumped out, not in his suit this time, but a hoodie and jeans, eyes wild with urgency. He didn't say anything. He didn't ask what happened. He simply held out his arms. Ada gave him the baby, hands trembling. Junior didn't cry. He just clung weakly to Daniel's shirt, his tiny hand curling around a button. Daniel stormed into the ER straight to the desk. "This child has a critical fever," he said, his voice low and controlled but full of fire. "Treat him. Now. I'll pay for everything. If anyone here delays another second, I'll buy this place and fire every last person in it." And just like that, the room snapped into motion. Doctors came running. Nurses rolled out equipment. Junior was rushed behind the double doors. Ada collapsed into a chair. Daniel sat beside her. For the first time, she let herself cry, and he didn't say a word. He just stayed. The waiting room lights were too bright, too white. The chairs too stiff. The silence too loud. Ada sat with her head in her hands, elbows on her knees. Her cheeks were still wet. Her jacket had fallen to the floor beside her. She didn't notice. Daniel sat just beside her. He didn't scroll through his phone. He didn't pace. He didn't talk. He just sat. Close enough for her to feel he was there, but far enough to let her breathe. It wasn't the kind of silence that demanded answers. It was the kind that said, "I'm here. Take your time." After what felt like hours, a nurse came out with an update. "Junior's stable," she said. "His fever broke. We're keeping him overnight for observation, but he's going to be okay." Ada let out a long, shaking breath. She hadn't even realized she'd been holding it. She leaned back against the wall, drained. Daniel looked at her. "Do you want me to call anyone?" She shook her head. "There's no one left to call." A pause. "You came," she whispered. He nodded. "Of course I did." Ada turned to him slowly. Her face was pale and blotchy, her eyes swollen from crying. But in that moment, she looked more beautiful than she ever had before. Real, worn down, but still standing. "I didn't know who else to text," she said, her voice barely audible. "I didn't even know if you'd show up." He turned toward her. "I didn't know either," he admitted, "until I was already on my way." They both gave a small, tired smile. Ada leaned forward again, resting her head in her hands. Her body shook, not from tears now, but from the overwhelming relief that Junior was safe, that she hadn't lost the only thing that mattered. Daniel reached out, slow and careful, and placed a hand on her back. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned toward him and let herself fold into his chest. She didn't speak. She didn't apologize. She just let go. For the first time since becoming a mother, Ada allowed herself to fall apart, and Daniel held her like it was the most natural thing in the world. He didn't tell her to calm down. He didn't say it was going to be fine. He just let her cry, let her shake, let her breathe. And somewhere in that moment, somewhere between the quiet hum of hospital machines and the sound of her heartbeat slowing against his, something shifted between them. It wasn't a romance. It wasn't a rescue. It was connection. Two people, broken in different ways, finding a rare kind of peace in each other's company. Outside, the night deepened. Inside, something new began to take root. The photo surfaced online less than 24 hours later. A grainy shot, captured discreetly in the dim light of a hospital waiting room. It showed Daniel Thompson. Yes, that Daniel Thompson, the billionaire, holding a woman close just past midnight. Her coat lay wrinkled on the chair beside her. Her eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. And yet, in that moment, nothing else seemed to matter but the way he held her. Like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. The caption read, "Tech mogul's midnight rescue. Who is the mystery woman?" It spread like wildfire. Blogs picked it up. Gossip sites ran with it. TV morning shows flashed the image between celebrity updates and political debates. It didn't matter that no one knew the truth. The internet was hungry. People speculated wildly. He's dating a single mother? She planned this. Classic gold digger move. Look at her. Who even lets a child go that long without care? He's finally moved on from his dead wife. She trapped him. Must be good at playing victim. Ada read the comments in silence. She sat on the edge of the motel bed, Junior sleeping peacefully beside her. Her phone screen glowed in the dark, post after post, headline after headline, each one a little more cruel than the last. She tried to stop scrolling, but it was like falling into a hole. Her hands trembled. Her throat felt tight. She turned off the screen and sat still for a long time, afraid even the light might touch her baby with that same poison. When Daniel came by the next morning, 2 coffees in hand, a soft knock on the door, he knew something had changed the moment she opened it. Her face was blank. Her eyes guarded again, like they were the first time they met. "I can't do this," she said. Daniel froze. "Ada, I don't want my son growing up in the middle of some scandal." I don't want him seeing lies one day and wondering if they're true. I don't want him thinking we were a mistake. Daniel placed the coffee down gently. You haven't done anything wrong. Doesn't matter, she said, shaking her head. People don't care. They see a photo and they decide who you are. He looked at her, quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, calmly. Then let me tell them who you really are. She narrowed her eyes. You mean issue a statement? Hire a PR team? No, he said. I mean speak, myself. No scripts. No edits. Ada blinked. On TV? Daniel nodded. You trusted me enough to text when your son was dying. Now I need you to trust me with this. Ada looked at Junior, curled on the bed, then back at Daniel. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. That night, the world would hear the truth, not in headlines or captions, but in Daniel's own words, and everything would change. The studio was quiet. No flashy lights, no dramatic music. Just a dim, calm space, 2 chairs, and a single camera rolling. Daniel sat across from the host, a middle-aged woman known for keeping interviews honest, not sensational. She had promised him one thing. No scripts, no cuts, no edits. Just truth, and that's exactly what he came to give. He took a breath. I know why I'm here, Daniel began. Not because I'm famous, not because I'm rich, but because a photo went viral. A moment that was never meant to be public. The host nodded but didn't interrupt. Daniel looked straight at the camera. I want to start with something I've never talked about publicly. 4 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in a car crash. I didn't speak about it in interviews. I didn't cry on camera. I just disappeared into my work. He paused. The studio was so quiet. His breath seemed to echo. I ate dinner alone every week in the same restaurant. Same table, same chair across from me. Always empty. A shift in his voice, softer now. And then one night, a young woman walked up to my table. She asked for my leftovers. Not for herself, for her baby. The host's brow softened. Daniel continued. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She didn't try to make a scene. She simply asked. He paused, then said the words slowly. May I have your leftovers, sir? And in that moment, Daniel said, I saw something I hadn't felt in years. I saw someone fighting to survive with dignity. For her child. Not for pity. Not for attention. Just for one spoonful of food. His voice cracked, but he kept going. She didn't take from me that night. She gave me something. She reminded me I still had a heart. That I was still capable of caring, of feeling, of showing up for someone who needed me. He leaned forward. Her name is Ada. Her baby's name is Junior. And they're not a headline. They're not a scandal. They're the reason I'm alive again. The host was quiet. Everyone in the control room was quiet. The internet, not yet watching, had no idea what was coming. Daniel finished simply. I didn't save her. She saved me. When the interview aired that night, the effect was immediate. The internet, usually so fast to tear people down, began to listen. Really listen. Mothers shared their stories. Single parents defended her. People who had once judged her now apologized. Nurses commented on how many girls like Ada that fall through the cracks. Donations flowed quietly to shelters. A mother in Kansas even started a support fund in Ada's name. And through it all, Ada stayed silent. Until the next morning, Daniel was in his office when he heard the knock. He opened the door and there she stood, Junior in her arms. Her eyes tired but no longer unsure. I'm not running, she said. If you still want us, we're here. Daniel didn't speak. He stepped aside. And for the first time, he didn't just open his door. He opened his life. The days that followed were quiet, almost peaceful. Daniel had rented Ada and Junior a small sunlit apartment in a calm part of the city. Not too fancy, but clean and warm, with soft gray walls and a little balcony that caught the morning light just right. She moved in with 2 bags and a baby carrier, but within a week it looked like home. Baby socks draped over the heater. Junior's drawings taped to the fridge. The scent of formula, baby lotion, and soft music lingering in the air. Daniel visited every morning. At first, he came with excuses. Groceries, medicine, updates from the doctor. But over time, he didn't need excuses. He came just to be there. To listen to Junior babble. To eat toast with Ada in the kitchen. To laugh at the mess a single baby could make with mashed bananas. They didn't talk about what they were. There were no labels, no timelines, just presence, peace, and something steady growing in the quiet moments between them. It had been a few months since that night in the restaurant. Ada and Junior were safe now. Their days were calm, their nights quiet. Daniel was still in their lives, gentle, steady, always showing up. Ada had started taking classes again, bit by bit, while Junior learned how to walk, fall, and laugh his way through everything. Ada had started to believe that the worst was behind her. She was wrong, because one afternoon trouble came knocking. Literally, there was a hard knock on the apartment door, sharp and fast. It made Ada jump. Junior was napping in the bedroom. Daniel had just left an hour earlier. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened the door slowly. And there he was, the man she never thought she'd see again, taller than she remembered, still wearing that same cocky smile. But his eyes were colder now, and sharper. "Ada," he said like nothing had happened. "It's been a while." She couldn't speak at first. She just stood there frozen. He leaned against the doorframe. "I saw you on the news. You and that billionaire guy. Looks like you've been doing pretty well." Ada's voice finally came out, quiet, but firm. "What do you want?" He shrugged. "I want to see my son." Her heart dropped. "No," she said quickly. "You gave that up. You told me to get rid of him. You left." He smirked. "That was then. This is now. He's mine, Ada. I have a right." Ada shook her head. "You don't even know him. You've never even tried. You didn't want us. I want him now," he said. "Especially since it looks like he's part of something bigger now. A better life. You think you can just erase me?" Ada's hands trembled. "You need to leave." But he didn't move. "You don't get to tell me what to do. I'm his father." Then another voice cut through the air. "No, you're not." Ada turned. Daniel was standing at the end of the hallway. He had come back, forgotten his phone on the counter. He stepped forward slowly, his voice low but powerful. "You abandoned them. You made your choice." The man narrowed his eyes. "And who are you supposed to be?" "I'm the one who stayed," Daniel said. "The one who fed him, held him, protected him when he was sick. The one who never walked away." The man scoffed. "You think money makes you his dad?" Daniel didn't flinch. "No, love does. And I love him." The air was tight, heavy. Ada stood between them, her body stiff with fear. But Daniel gently reached out and touched her arm. "I've got this," he said softly. Then he turned back to the man. "You have no legal claim, no presence, no relationship. And if you try anything, I'll make sure the courts know exactly who you are and who you aren't." The man's expression faltered for the first time. "You don't scare me." Daniel stepped closer, calm but firm. "You should be scared, not of me, but of what you already lost." The man looked at Ada one last time, but this time she didn't look scared. She looked strong. She took a deep breath and said clearly, "Leave and don't come back." He left. No more words. Just silence as his footsteps faded down the hall. Daniel closed the door gently behind him. Ada stood still, breathing hard, her hands shaking. He pulled her into a hug. "You're safe," he whispered. "I promise you. You're both safe." That night, Daniel made a decision. No more chances. No more loose ends. He met with his lawyer the next morning. "I want to adopt Junior," he said, "legally, officially, as my son." The process took weeks. Forms, interviews, meetings with social workers. Ada sat through every one of them, holding Daniel's hand. And when the final papers arrived, signed, sealed, official, Daniel knelt beside Junior, who was stacking toy blocks in the living room. He held out the adoption certificate and said gently, "Guess what, buddy? I'm your dad now. Forever. Junior didn't understand the words, but he smiled. That wide, warm, gummy smile. The same one that started it all. Ada stood in the kitchen doorway, tears in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from relief. From knowing that no matter what happened, her son now had the kind of father she once thought didn't exist. And this time, no one could take that away. Not headlines, not fear, not even the past. They were a family, not by accident, not by blood, but by love. And that was more than enough. A year later, life looked different. Not louder, not grander, just fuller. The headlines were gone. The gossip had faded. And the man who once tried to reclaim what he had so easily discarded long disappeared, like a shadow chased away by steady light. What remained was something far quieter and far more real. A life, a family, a beginning. It was a soft spring afternoon. Beneath the generous shade of a wide oak tree in a quiet city park, a small group had gathered. No cameras, no arches, no orchestras, just a few close friends, and one little boy in a navy vest and matching bow tie, toddling through the grass with a tiny velvet box in both hands. Daniel stood waiting beneath the tree, wearing a soft gray blazer. The one Ida once said made him look less like a billionaire, more like a man. His eyes, once hollowed by grief, now brimmed with something else entirely. Peace, purpose, light. When Junior reached him, cheeks round and eyes gleaming, Daniel knelt down and gently accepted the box from his small hands. "Thank you, son," he whispered. Junior giggled and turned back, running toward Ada, who stood barefoot in the grass. Her dress was simple, white, flowing, honest. Her curls were pinned back with tiny wildflowers, the ones Junior had helped pick that morning. But it wasn't the dress or the flowers that made her radiant. It was her eyes. Alive, steady, safe. Daniel turned toward her and slowly, reverently, sank to one knee. And in that moment, the world seemed to still. "I've had everything money could buy," he said softly. "Houses, headlines, a company worth billions. But none of it filled the space inside me." He paused, breathing in the weight of the moment. "I lost my wife. I lost my daughter. And for a long time I thought I'd lost the meaning of life too. I was alive, but I wasn't living." He looked at her, really looked. "Then I met you. You weren't asking for help. You weren't trying to be saved. You were just trying to feed your baby." His voice caught, rich with emotion. "And somehow, in that moment, you fed me too." He opened the box. Inside, a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no spectacle. Just a quiet, enduring promise. You gave me a reason to stay. A reason to feel again. A son. A family. His voice trembled. Not from nerves. From gratitude. "Ada, will you marry me?" Tears sprang to her eyes. She didn't wait. She dropped to her knees and threw her arms around him, holding him tight enough to say yes without words. But she said it anyway. Yes. From the small circle of loved ones, a wave of joyful cheers rose, light and spontaneous. The officiant stepped forward, keeping the vows short, just the way they had wanted. Nothing grand, nothing rehearsed. Only love. As they exchanged rings, Junior waddled over and tugged on Daniel's pant leg. "Daddy!" he chirped, lifting his arms. The crowd fell silent. Daniel bent low and scooped him up, one arm holding his son, the other wrapped around his bride. "I love you, son," he said, his voice thick and full. Ada stepped closer, wrapping herself around them both. Her boys, and in that sun-drenched corner of the park, no one cared how the story had started. Not the pain, not the past, not the man who once walked away. What mattered was what had been built in the ashes. A family. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Forged through loss, restored through love, chosen by heart. And in that quiet, sacred moment beneath the branches of an old oak tree, something unbreakable took root. They were together, and that was more than enough. The end. If you love this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel for more captivating stories like this one.